Behold the igneous wastes, my acolytes, where hope is reduced to mere embers. In the suffocating ash of Nocturne, innocence finds itself cornered by foul, abyssal horrors. These twisted flesh constructs, born of pure heresy, sought to extinguish the flickering light of humanity. They advanced without mercy, dripping foul toxins upon the scorched basalt beneath. The faithful braced for their final, agonizing silence. Yet the Promethean Creed teaches us that the darkest hour merely precedes the most blinding, righteous dawn imaginable. From the suffocating smog above, a localized tectonic event shattered the very heavens. A jade meteor of absolute vengeance struck the ruined earth with apocalyptic fury. The vile abominations paused their relentless advance, their grotesque sensory organs overwhelmed by the sudden atmospheric displacement. Dust and molten slag rained upon their corrupted hides. Within the glowing crater stood a titan, forged from the heart of the world itself. The Lord of Drakes had come to answer the silent prayers. Clad in draconic scales of emerald and obsidian, his massive form eclipsed the surging magma flows. He positioned himself perfectly between the defenseless and the darkness. His gaze burned with the primal heat of a newborn star. It was a searing glare of ultimate judgment, promising instantaneous purgation to the heretical trespassers. In his colossal grip rested the Dawnbringer, a masterwork of systemic destruction. The weapon hummed with contained electrostatic wrath, eager to enact the Emperor's divine will. With a singular fluid motion that defied his immense bulk, the Primarch swung his legendary hammer. The kinetic transfer was an event of pure, unadulterated devastation. A localized shockwave of thunderous force instantly shattered the leading elements of the vile horde. Their twisted bodies were unmade, cast aside like brittle, broken cinders. I have read ancient accounts trying to quantify that singular strike. Yet, mere parchment cannot capture the sublime perfection of such overwhelming, focused, systemic annihilation. The hammer's physical toll was merely the prologue. His integrated gauntlet raised high, unleashing the holy Prometheum upon the chaotic remnants struggling to their shattered feet. An ocean of golden flame completely engulfed the battlefield. The heretical constructs were cleansed utterly, their physical forms rapidly reduced to sterile ash upon the wind. For the terrified civilians trapped against the inferno, the blinding heat was not a herald of doom, but rather the comforting embrace of their immortal father. We transition now from the searing legends of Nocturne to the silent catacombs of our present reality. Here, surrounded by forgotten databanks, the true cost is tallied. I transcribe these fading memories so that you might understand the absolute burden of empathy. The 18th Legion did not merely forge weapons, they forged hope. These hallowed records speak of the Salamanders, the most resilient artisans of the Emperor's grand design. They alone maintained a fragile warmth within a freezing, hostile galaxy. They were the masters of the anvil and the flame. While others saw humanity as mere resources, Vulkan's noble sons saw them as precious artifacts requiring preservation. To fully grasp their tragic grandeur, we must delve deeply into the primordial furnace of their genesis. We must examine the crucible that tempered their unwavering resolve. Let us examine the hallowed codices, where the 18th Legion is eternally enshrined. They are the Salamanders, an unbreakable brotherhood forged upon the volcanic anvil. Born from the fiery crucible of Nocturne, they embrace the Promethean Creed with absolute devotion. Their overarching doctrine prioritized the sacred preservation of frail humanity. While other genetic lineages conquered through cold calculation or brutal subjugation, the sons of Vulkan offered an unwavering shield against the encroaching galactic darkness. They understood that supreme power without fundamental compassion was merely another form of tyranny. Thus, their legion became the ultimate guardians of the common citizen. To comprehend their incredible resilience, one must first understand their brutal homeworld. Nocturne is a relentless realm of tectonic upheaval and perpetual, scorching volcanic storms. Beneath skies choked with toxic ash, survival itself was a monumental achievement. The inhabitants learned to endure conditions that would easily break lesser mortal frames. From this unforgiving geological nightmare, the Emperor recruited his most steadfast warriors. Their genetic seed combined flawlessly with the extreme environmental stressors of their youth. Every aspirant was expected to master the rigorous arts of the forge. Shaping metal became a profound spiritual meditation, a physical manifestation of their discipline. Their Primarch taught them that the hammer constructs just as effectively as it destroys. A true warrior must build a future worth dying to protect. Standing amongst his devoted sons, the Lord of Drakes radiated a profound, stabilizing aura. He was a colossal figure of terrifying might, yet profoundly gentle. Their war gear reflected this dual philosophy perfectly. The holy Prometheum they utilized was designed to cleanse the wicked and illuminate the path for the righteous. The Great Crusade witnessed their unparalleled fortitude across countless war zones. Whenever a front line threatened to completely collapse, the Emerald Tide would firmly anchor the defense. Captain Numion often led these desperate holding actions personally. His battered storm shield absorbed catastrophic kinetic impacts that would have pulverized standard Imperial armored divisions. Even their apothecaries, like the esteemed Tekel, operated with unparalleled stoicism. They retrieved the sacred gene seed amidst the most horrific, apocalyptic firestorms imaginable, without hesitation. To witness their tactical deployment was to see a masterclass in controlled aggression. They moved with the deliberate, unstoppable momentum of a slow-flowing magma river. At the spearhead, the Primarch himself crushed the strongest enemy fortifications. His mere presence on the active battlefield solidified the morale of every loyal soldier. The sonic boom of his mighty hammer echoed like divine thunder. It signaled the absolute, undeniable end for those who dared defy the imperial truth. During those glorious years of expansion, their reputation as the most humane protectors was firmly cemented. They were the burning torch that held back midnight. Alas, such pure nobility makes for a spectacular tragedy when the galaxy inevitably turns upon itself. The golden era of the Great Crusade was ending. A shadow of unimaginable treachery was gathering in the cold void. The stage was being set for the darkest hour the Salamanders would ever face. To truly appreciate their tragic endurance, we must meticulously examine the systemic realism of their war gear. The 18th Legion did not merely wear armor. They inhabited moving fortresses. Behold the holy bolter design. Its intricate internal machineries were maintained with religious fervor by the Salamanders, ensuring relentless cyclic purgation against the myriad enemies of mankind. Every microscopic gear, every blessed spring was meticulously calibrated. A weapon malfunction upon the battlefield was considered a catastrophic spiritual failure, an insult to the revered Promethean Creed. Deep beneath the crust of their volatile homeworld, the legionaries operated massive subterranean forges. The rhythmic, concussive impacts of heavy hammers formed the beating heart of their culture. Layering incredibly dense ceramite plating over complex artificial musculature required absolute, unwavering precision. They bound their very souls to these mechanical shells through intense, localized heat treatments. The sacred flamers were carefully inscribed with oaths of ruin. The Prometheum tanks were pressurized to maximum tolerances, promising a glorious, incandescent cleansing for the heretical masses. At the absolute epicenter of this industrial cathedral stood the Primarch himself. Vulkan personally inspected the core plasma reactors, his raw strength stabilizing the volatile, highly energetic reactions. Even their battlefield medical protocols possessed an industrial, highly mechanized efficiency. Apothecary Tekel calibrated his complex narthecium bracer with the utmost, uncompromising clinical detachment and supreme spiritual focus. The iconic Dawnbringer required massive electrostatic generators simply to charge its primary power cells. It was an engineering marvel, designed explicitly to shatter both armor and heretical resolve. Their tactical formations mirrored their master-crafted armaments. In massed combat, they locked their heavy storm shields together, constructing an impenetrable mobile fortress wall of highly dense, ablative ceramite. Captain Numion directed these armored phalanxes with algorithmic precision. The overlapping fields of their localized energy shields completely negated incoming high-velocity kinetic bombardments from hostile, deeply entrenched positions. Theoretical tactical models demonstrate that their sustained, synchronized melta volleys could reliably vaporize standard vehicular armor within exactly 3.4 seconds of sustained, focused thermal application. This systematic, grinding approach to mechanized warfare defined their absolute dominance. They did not sprint toward glorious victory. They marched inexorably, methodically dismantling the physical defenses of traitors. Every single logistical variable was calculated perfectly. Ammunition reserves, heat dissipation rates, and localized gravity fluctuations were all mathematically factored into their grand, overwhelming doctrines of systemic purgation. The vast data archives confirm their mechanical supremacy. Yet, this total reliance upon heavy, slow-moving infantry tactics would eventually become the fundamental flaw exploited by their treacherous kin. We now approach the most horrific temporal coordinate recorded within Imperial history. The treacherous deployment to the black sands of the Isstvan system was mathematically flawlessly executed. Trusting absolutely in the logistical framework of the Crusade, the Primarch committed his entire heavily armored vanguard into the planetary depression. It was a textbook, massive orbital insertion. Their holy weapons were primed and fully loaded with sanctified promethium. The internal chronometers counted down exactly to 0. The drop pods impacted the devastated planetary crust violently. Instead of engaging a disorganized, scattered rebellion, they walked directly into an optimized, deeply entrenched kill zone. The systemic realism of their grand strategy was turned instantly against them. The mathematical certainty of their absolute destruction was agonizing. The 18th Legion had firmly planted their mighty anvil, entirely unaware that the treacherous hammer was already falling fast. Upon the treacherous black sands of Isstvan V, the Emerald Legion deployed with absolute structural perfection. They formed an unbreakable front line against the entrenched heretical positions. Led by their immortal father, they advanced steadily. Their heavy ceramite boots crushed the jagged obsidian beneath, perfectly synchronized and radiating absolute unwavering loyalty to Terra. Every heavy flamer was fully primed, radiating a comforting thermal hum. They believed entirely that their immense sacrifices would swiftly break the traitorous defensive lines completely. However, the tactical databanks within our silent archives tell a profoundly different narrative. The atmospheric auspex arrays suddenly registered anomalous, massive energy spikes from high orbit. The Loyalist reserve forces, supposedly arriving to reinforce the active vanguard, abruptly halted their advance. A horrifying, chilling silence descended upon the entire planetary communication grid. Then, the absolute betrayal was mercilessly unleashed. The skies above Isstvan instantly ignited, not with the Emperor's grace, but with highly concentrated, catastrophic orbital thermal bombardment. A devastating tempest of destructive energy struck the tightly packed salamander formations. The sheer kinetic shockwave vaporized the obsidian plains, burying the brave warriors instantly underground. Captain Numian raised his storm shield against the apocalyptic downpour. The horrific truth dawned upon him. Their own allied brothers had deliberately triggered this catastrophic trap. Heavy defensive barriers shattered under the sustained barrage. Trust, the foundational pillar of the Great Crusade, was instantly pulverized alongside their magnificent, master-crafted ablative armor plating. From the elevated ridgelines, the true architects of this treachery emerged. Traitor legions marched downwards in perfect synchronization to eliminate the reeling, heavily disoriented survivors. Overwhelming hostile fire pinned the loyal sons to the shattered bedrock. They were systematically silenced by heavily armored traitors who once shared their highest sacred oaths. Records from that horrific hour remain painfully fragmented. The sheer volume of tactical data was utterly corrupted by the massive electromagnetic interference of localized nuclear detonations. Amidst the catastrophic ruin, the Lord of Drakes defiantly rose. His emerald armor was heavily scorched, but his immortal resilience easily defied the apocalyptic incoming ordnance. Vulkan placed his immense frame between the incoming fire and his devastated children. He became a living, breathing fortress of pure, unyielding adamantium and dense ceramite. His legendary hammer sparked with highly concentrated, unstable electrostatic wrath. The Primarch prepared to deliver overwhelming kinetic retribution against the treacherous cowards orchestrating this grand betrayal. Reacting to their father's unyielding presence, the surviving legionaries formed improvised defensive perimeters. They answered the treacherous bombardment with highly coordinated, heavily overlapping thermal cleansing sweeps. Apothecary Tikel operated with absolute cold efficiency amidst the total chaos. He systematically secured the Legion's genetic legacy, while heavy enemy artillery pounded their devastated coordinates. Promethean reserves were rapidly depleted, holding the desperate defensive line. Their localized mechanical superiority was slowly being ground down by the sheer mathematics of overwhelming attrition. The tactical situation degraded into a perfectly structured, horrific siege. Hostile forces completely encircled the localized depression, pouring continuous, punishing kinetic fire into the trapped vanguard. Refusing to yield completely, Vulkan charged directly into the metallic storm. His roaring hammer shattered hostile armor, forcefully ensuring that every loyal sacrifice extracted heavy tolls. The sheer volume of hostile infantry crashed against the emerald defensive perimeter. Traitorous brothers, completely consumed by chaotic heresy, engaged in relentless, brutally physical, localized combat. Captain Numion ruthlessly bashed his heavy storm shield into the defiled ceramite of his former allies. Sparks erupted violently as the mechanical impacts shattered their corrupted plates. The massive electrostatic discharge from the Dawnbringer overloaded hostile kinetic barriers instantly. Defiled weapons shattered, leaving the treacherous cowards completely exposed to the Primarch's overwhelming retribution. Surrounded by dozens of heavily armed traitors, the Lord of Drakes unleashed a devastating circular kinetic sweep. The sheer physical force cast their broken forms aside effortlessly. Heavy explosive ordnance detonated directly against his impenetrable chest plating. He absorbed the catastrophic thermal impacts without yielding a single step backwards upon the ruined black sands. Empty flamers were discarded upon the highly toxic soil. The loyal sons drew their combat blades, maintaining their defensive formations with absolute, unyielding mechanical discipline and focus. Their emerald circle grew agonizingly smaller amidst the sprawling darkness. Every fallen brother created a temporary gap that was immediately filled by another relentlessly stoic, heavily armored warrior. Apothecary Tikel was forcefully thrown back by a heavy kinetic impact. Yet he completely shielded the sacred genetic vials with his own battered, fiercely deteriorating armored form. Even the automated diagnostic skulls were methodically shot down, crashing into dark, mysterious chemical pools. The Loyalists fought entirely blind against the most overwhelming tactical disadvantage imaginable. The merciless orbital bombardment continued unabated. Blinding thermal flashes constantly erased the shifting front lines, turning the sprawling valley into a chaotic, highly concentrated systemic meat grinder. Power reserves critically failed across their defensive perimeter. Loyalist armor locked up completely, leaving brave warriors completely immobilized before the relentless, highly systematic advancing treacherous infantry line. My hands tremble as I transcribe these specific temporal coordinates. The mechanical failure of their war gear forced the ultimate, agonizing test of their legendary physical endurance. The Primarch physically supported falling orbital debris to shield his wounded children. His incredible biomechanical strength was pushed far beyond the ultimate theoretical limits of any immortal. Massive hydraulic systems within his armor screamed under the catastrophic structural pressure. He bore the immense, crushing weight of a shattered sky to protect his cherished sons. The legendary Dawnbringer slipped from his exhausted grasp, falling heavy upon the ruined ash. Its brilliant electrostatic glow faded entirely, mirroring the dying hope of the Legion. A tidal wave of corrupted metal and heavy kinetic fire washed over their final defensive strongpoint. The ultimate collapse of the 18th Legion was unfolding with brutal certainty. Captain Numion fell as his storm shield generators catastrophically overloaded. The darkness completely consumed his visual sensors, silencing his fierce commands amidst the deafening roar of betrayal. Following his final, desperate orders, Apothecary Tekel retreated into the subterranean fault lines. He carried their most vital genetic future away from the absolute center of destruction. Unarmed, the Immortal Father tore through corrupted plates with his bare hands. Yet the sheer, crushing mathematics of total attrition systematically buried him beneath an armored mountain. A heavy siege cannon was pressed directly against his battered chest. The subsequent point-blank thermal detonation engulfed the Primarch in a blinding, catastrophic sphere of absolute ruin. When the blinding thermal flash finally subsided, only a sprawling graveyard of devastated ceramite remained. The magnificent 18th Legion was reduced to smoking, twisted metallic debris. Treacherous infantry swept meticulously across the blasted depression, ensuring every loyalist form was permanently silenced. The anvil of Nocturne had seemingly been shattered beyond any repair. Their grand tactical doctrines and localized defensive perimeters failed against unimaginable betrayal. A heavy, suffocating silence fell upon the blackened plains, replacing the thunderous imperial war cries. Hundreds of thousands of the Emperor's most dedicated protectors lay motionless. The sheer scale of this mechanized atrocity defied every logical, strategic calculation previously conceived. Deep beneath the planet's scarred crust, Apothecary Tekel clutched the surviving genetic harvest. He represented a fragile, flickering ember in a galaxy suddenly plunged into absolute darkness. His mechanical narthecium hummed quietly, preserving the microscopic legacy of his fallen brothers. He began his long, arduous descent into the suffocating, claustrophobic obsidian subterranean labyrinths. Within our sacred archives, the temporal records of this specific planetary engagement abruptly cease. The official Imperial databanks register a total, catastrophic loss of the entire vanguard. I have scrutinized countless encrypted reports regarding the aftermath. They detail vast, sweeping operations by traitor forces, meticulously cataloging the devastated remains of the shattered loyalists. However, amidst the sprawling mechanical carnage, a profound structural anomaly emerged. It represents a systemic impossibility that continually baffles the greatest analytical minds of the Inquisition. At the exact epicenter of the heaviest orbital bombardment, where the Immortal Father was last recorded engaging hostile armor, absolutely no trace of his massive form remained. Treacherous commanders scanned the localized blast zone with sophisticated auspex arrays. The complete physical absence of a Primarch defied every known law of thermal and kinetic physics. Only the legendary Dawnbringer lay abandoned upon the irradiated soil. Its heavy electrostatic core was entirely drained, offering no technological clues to its master's sudden, impossible disappearance. Did the massive thermal detonation entirely vaporize his highly resilient biology? Such a theory fundamentally contradicts the profound, genetically engineered permanence inherently built into a Primarch structure. Hidden survivors whispered of a strange, localized temporal distortion occurring precisely at the moment of impact. A profound mystery was instantly forged within the burning planetary crucible. The arcane scrolls hint at a deeply profound metaphysical truth concerning Vulkan. He was an absolute perpetual entity, possessing an undocumented biological mechanism of continuous structural regeneration. This incredible systemic anomaly means that his physical form could, theoretically, rebuild itself from mere microscopic cellular remnants. He was fundamentally bound to the enduring planetary flames. Yet, if his regenerative capabilities were absolute, where did he vanish? The treacherous forces thoroughly scoured the ruined system, finding absolutely nothing but devastated, lifeless armor plating. Some encrypted astropathic echoes suggest he was forcefully abducted into the maddening depths of the Imperium. His infinite resilience transformed into an endless cycle of agonizing purgation. Trapped within an unknown, heavily shielded containment facility, the Immortal Father endured unimaginable systematic torments. His captors continuously tested the extreme biological boundaries of his miraculous perpetual nature. He was subjected to devastating kinetic and thermal extremes, broken and remade endlessly. The galaxy's most compassionate guardian became a tragic subject of relentless, horrific physical experimentation. Yet his loyal sons never abandoned their arduous, systematic search. Across the devastated galactic sectors, the shattered remnants of the 18th Legion tirelessly hunted. Apothecary Tekel safely preserved the remaining genetic material, ensuring their biological lineage endured the catastrophic mechanical ruin of the Great Betrayal. They sought the 9 sacred artifacts forged by their immortal father. These legendary technological relics represented their soul tethered to his profound, unfathomable, enduring wisdom. It became their defining eternal objective. Recovering these mechanical marvels became a grand, systemic crusade to piece together his scattered, infinite legacy. They firmly believed that reassembling his master-crafted arsenal would invariably summon him back from the chaotic, swirling depths of the unknown. Until that prophetic day, they maintain the roaring planetary fires. They fiercely guard the defenseless, executing his doctrine of localized, compassionate protection without hesitation. Even heavily scarred by absolute systemic betrayal, their emerald armor remains an imposing, resolute symbol of hope across the constantly deteriorating, highly hostile Imperial sectors. They endure the excruciating, heavy burden of absolute empathy in a universe that actively rewards only brutal, cold, and calculated mechanized attrition. I have endlessly cataloged their tactical deployments. Their localized compassion often compromises pure strategic efficiency, yet they absolutely refuse to compromise their deeply ingrained principles. We return now to these silent subterranean archives, where mere parchment stubbornly attempts to encapsulate such profound, towering, biomechanical resilience. The horrific scars of the Isstvan system remain permanently etched into their genetic lineage. It is a haunting, continuous reminder of humanity's absolute darkest hour. I secure these fading, fragile records tightly. The heavily corrupted data regarding his final, devastating engagement must be meticulously preserved for future tactical analysis. The profound mysteries surrounding his impossible biological restoration remain completely unsolved. The galaxy continually burns, yet his monumental, master-crafted anvil remains entirely empty. Perhaps he actively endures within some heavily shielded, highly classified containment facility. Or perhaps his microscopic remnants simply scatter across the freezing galactic void. Our sophisticated analytical arrays provide absolutely no comforting logical conclusions. We are left solely with faith in his highly resilient, deeply forged, enduring armor. The heavy shadows lengthen considerably across this silent subterranean facility. My meticulous transcriptions regarding the 18th Legion are fundamentally complete for this specific cycle. Their profound tragedy demonstrates that immense compassion represents a uniquely heavy, deeply agonizing structural vulnerability within a constantly deteriorating, hyper-violent universe. As this fragile, localized illumination is systematically extinguished, we must brace ourselves for the overwhelming, absolute cold of the encroaching galactic midnight. Yet the Promethean fire forever burns hotly within their devoted mechanical hearts. The immortal anvil patiently awaits its legendary, master-crafted master. Reflect deeply upon their immense sacrifice, my faithful acolytes. May the Emperor's absolute structural integrity guide your own treacherous paths forevermore. The heavy iron vault doors seal permanently shut, locking away the devastating mechanical truths of our shattered golden age. The 18th Legion's immense systemic sacrifice is officially fully chronicled. In this fiercely deteriorating, unforgiving galaxy, absolute compassion is frequently rewarded exclusively with highly concentrated, overwhelming kinetic destruction. Kindness remains a severely punishable, tragic offense. Yet their emerald resilience stubbornly defies all logical, highly advanced strategic calculations. The anvil endures profound systemic pressure without fracturing completely under the encroaching darkness. We must systematically internalize their agonizing lesson. When the absolute midnight finally descends upon our fragile Imperial sectors, we must construct our own localized, heavily armored internal light. The relentless mechanical grinding of cosmic attrition will inevitably attempt to pulverize our deepest spiritual foundations. The immortal master of the Forge understood this terrifying, inescapable galactic reality perfectly. Therefore, my faithful acolytes, forge your absolute resolve in the blazing inferno of duty. Do not expect external salvation from the vast, freezing, highly apathetic universal void whatsoever. Become the unyielding adamantium shield for those who lack structural defensive capabilities. Accept the heavy, agonizing burden of ultimate duty until your final biomechanical failure inevitably occurs. Let the tragic saga of the mighty Salamanders forever illuminate your treacherous pathways. The sacred Promethean fire must perpetually burn within your heavily armored, fiercely resolute, devoted souls. The grand archive seal upon this profound, haunting mechanical tragedy. Hold the line against absolute midnight. May his divine light protect us. Imperator Gloria in excelsis terra. If this grim-dark archival record enlightened your journey today, strictly ensure to like, share, and subscribe to our grand channel for further devastating Imperial systemic truths.